or how would you define it yourself? I can go first. So, as far as being bridled, right, we can look at the Google definition of it. And the Google definition of bridled is, let's see. Oh, Lord. I'll go ahead with my own definition while I show you the Google one. But my definition of bridled is control, right? Self-control. It's defined as being... like having self-control. Like when something is bridled, when you think about being bridled, you think about a horse, right? And anytime a horse is bridled, they're like put into this contraption with straps that allows the owner to control the horse, right? And so in that sense, bridled for me, as far as the Holy Spirit goes, is when I'm not a horse, please, but in this sense, the Holy Spirit is controlling me, right? So I'm giving him the reins. I'm giving him control over myself, and allowing myself to, be moved by him, essentially. So does anybody have a definition for bridled that they can share? I won't have to call on anybody. Okay. This is fine, but wait, I do need one person to go. I at least need to hear you guys' thoughts. Annie, do you mind going for me? I said everything. Okay. Bridled. What bridled means to you? Precious. What does bridled mean to you?
You kind of said it,
okay.
Honestly. You kind of encapsulated it.
That's fine. All right. So, bridled in the sense of what I was talking about, but now we're going to be talking about relationships, right? And we're talking about our friendships specifically, not just romantic relationships, but actual friendships and the way we can be bridled in them. So, one of the things I want to touch on is oversharing. So, how many of you guys, by a show of hands, deal with oversharing? Like, you may find yourself, okay, yeah, sometimes a little bit. Okay, I see you back there. Sometimes we deal with oversharing, right? And we want to look at what that does in a friendship and how to be bridled in the sense of who are we sharing with? Why are we sharing those things? Why don't we go to God with those things, right? Because sometimes we may overshare with our friends, but we undershare with the Lord. And so let's get into that, right? So... Joy, you went earlier. Rachel, do you want to go for me? I'm going to ask you a quick question. Who do you go to share your issues on just in a very general level? Who would you go to when you have an issue or problem? Who do you go to share?
I would say my sisters, for real. Yeah, probably them.
Aimee, do you want to go?
Sure. I would say from my older sister.
Your older sister?
Yeah.
Okay. Your older sister. There's somebody behind you.
I go like to people, either my brother or my mom sometimes.
Yeah. So I would say like everybody has somebody in mind that they go to when they have issues, right? For me, if I go to my mom, she'll make a bigger issue. So I know for me, I can struggle with going to my mom, but I might trust like my friends. Like if I have a leader, a mentor, those are some of the people that I may trust to share my issues with. But then how do we know they're the right person to share with, right? So let's look a little bit at Nehemiah. And Nehemiah is one of those examples of who to share with and how to share. And we're going to read. All right. So it says, we're going to read from Nehemiah 2. And Nehemiah 2, verse 9 to 13. We don't need to go to 13. We'll read to 12. And it says, I came to the governors of the province beyond the river. I'm reading ESV, by the way, so it's Nehemiah 2, verse 9, starting at verse 9 ESV. Then I came to the governors of the province beyond the river and gave them the king's letter. Now the king had sent with me officers of the army and horsemen. But when Sanballat the Horonite, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people in Israel. So let's just touch on 9 and 10. Do you see how some people, when they hear about what you're... Nehemiah. I said Nehemiah, sorry. Nehemiah 9 is Jeremiah. Nehemiah 9. All right, so we look at 9, and we see how Jeremiah, it says he came to the governors of the province of beyond the river to give them the king's letter. Now the king has sent with me officers of the army and horses men, right? So when we look at it, we see that if we look at the chapter before, if we look at Nehemiah 1, Nehemiah had heard about what was going on in Jerusalem, and that grieved him so deeply, right? To the point that he was like, I need to do something, Lord. Like, he had a whole burden on his heart to fix the walls of Jerusalem, to restore that city. And so he went to the king. He didn't even go to the king, first of all. This man was so sad in his face and his mannerism that the king saw it, and he was like, what is troubling you? Like, why is your deposition like this? What is going on that you are so sad before me, right? And Nehemiah, like, this is what it's like when you have something going on in your life and the other people around you notice, right? And this, in this sense, is not oversharing, but he had shared with the king what was going on, and the king said, I will help you. Right, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you timber. I'm going to give you all sorts of tools. I'm going to send with you people to help you rebuild this city. And the king sent all of these things. He sent, like, this man, he destroyed a whole forest for Nehemiah. Like, if you read Nehemiah 1, he destroyed a whole forest so that he could, is it destroyed? Sorry, I don't want to use that language. But he literally, like, fell a whole forest so that he could rebuild Jerusalem, right? And, but I want to talk a little bit about how sometimes when people do help you, that fanfare surrounding it, that noise that that person may make can harm you in the end, right? And so we see that the king had sent with Jeremiah from that verse 9, the king had sent with me officers of the army and horsemen. So that attracted a lot of attention, even though what was meant to help Nehemiah ended up attracting a lot of negative attention. And sometimes you can't help that, right? Sometimes we're in the grace of the Lord. Like, a lot of people, you're going to have attention on you. You're going to have people watching you, seeing how you move, what you're doing in life. But in this sense, the person who was sent to him also brought him negative attention. And so what I want to get at is the discernment that it takes with who you're sharing with. Those people who have been sent to help you. In this sense, Nehemiah is perfect. The king helped him, right? But at the same time, it caught the attention of two wicked people who did not want to see Israel prosper. And so if we continue on to verse 11, and it said, I went to Jerusalem and was there for 3 days. Then I arose in the night, and I and a few men with me, and I told no one what my God had put on my heart to do in Jerusalem. There was no animal with me but the one which I rode, right? And so we see that here, Nehemiah is a perfect example of what it means to have the discernment to keep certain things to yourself. He said he told nobody what his plan was, what the Lord had sent him to do. And I'm not saying that you have to keep everything to yourself, but do you see how he had the discernment, he had the wisdom to approach a situation where he saw the noise that him going with the king and all the officers and the horsemen, he literally left them in the middle of the night so that they couldn't go with him, so that if anyone saw him with all of those people, they won't hinder his journey. He left in the middle of the night and he went to go and do what he was doing, what the Lord has sent him to do. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So, and yeah, so as far as oversharing goes, Nehemiah is one of those good examples of how to use discernment. So I want to ask you guys, my question would be for you. How do you use your discernment when you're thinking about who to share with? Uncle Leko.
All right, so I was just going to talk about oversharing. Nehemiah's case is one that is a major example. There's also a story in 1 Kings chapter 13 that is another major example of what to not say to people. Because when you overshare, that's when people know how to get you to stumble. I know we're not going. So at this point, what was happening was Nehemiah did not share anything because people would discourage him. So it was not even just his enemies, because this is like, sometimes that you share the great plan that God has for you, and everyone else around you will be like, what? You can't even achieve that. You're not good enough. And so oversharing, it doesn't really come in a bad way, but especially when it's a revelation from God, and the people around you cannot see it. If you say it to the wrong people, they will probably discourage you more than they would even plot against you. So we have to be careful when it comes to like your dreams or revelations from God with the people that you share it with, and when you do tell them about it.
That's good. Anybody else? How do you use how do you go about picking who to share with? Or choosing who you share with, or what even to share with them?
I think they're paying, I guess, like with your friends or people that you like hang out with regularly, paying attention to their habits and what they do and the things that they themselves will share with you. Because there are some people that just naturally just like talk. And it's not always malice intent, but there are some people that just don't have the self-control to keep things to themselves. It doesn't mean that they're not good friends per se, but it's a flaw that should be taken into account. And so being attentive to how certain people act around you, and saying to myself, well, if they're telling me this about this person, I didn't even ask them, then who knows what they can say about me if I let them know this thing about my life. And so just being attentive to the little things that people are doing around you to pick up on who I can trust and who I should, not give too much detail about so-and-so so it's not spreading everywhere.
That's good. Yeah. And so I would say, that's a really good point. I know for myself, for example, when I first got saved, I had a friend who, when I would share with her, the first thing that she would do is immediately just start praying. And so having the person around you, or having people around you who know what to do when you are sharing what you're going through, or who know what to say, or who are being spirit-led when you're sharing with them, right? And so one of the things that I often think about is the person you're sharing with, have they been graced to handle the things that you are sharing with them? Are they at the same place as you in life? Are they emotionally ready for what you're about to share with them? Are they spiritually ready for what they're about to share, or what you are about to share with them? Because if you share and then they hype you up and now you're ready to fight, right? Or if you share and then the first thing that comes to their mind is, oh, well, let me tell somebody else about it, or let me share what you just shared with me with someone, right? Having that, what are they, I guess initially, yeah, are they capable and able to handle what you have shared? So that's one of the things that I think about often. And then I want to touch a little bit about so we've been talking about oversharing and what that may look like in different places. We also saw in the Bible a good example in Nehemiah. But I want to talk about a bad example of oversharing. And I know can you guys give me an example of a bad example of oversharing in the Word? Anybody? Who is it?
But I might be a different example. It's in one of the Gospels when Jesus, I think he healed a blind man with I think, let me just, fingers crossed. He had healed a blind man with spit in his mud, I believe. And he told him to go out and just keep your mouth shut, don't tell anyone about it. And immediately the man went and started like telling all the people in his town or his village or whatever that Christ had just healed me, and they all came towards him for healing. So I guess that's one thing I could think of as an example of oversharing, because it was a direct command from God, just keep your mouth shut, and then he went and told everybody that was around him. But you probably have a different example.
Yeah, that's not a bad example at all. Anybody else? Can you think of any time in the Word that you've seen someone overshare? Okay, Evan.
Is it Samson?
Yeah. That's exactly who I was thinking about. The oversharer of oversharers. This man had no business telling this woman what the secret to his power was, right? But Samson, and I was talking to Lola about it, the illusion of relationship, the illusion of closeness that you may feel with somebody, can oftentimes, I guess, mislead you with who to share with or how you should share. And I'm not saying keep things to yourself. We're not in that, oh yeah, you need to be standoffish. You don't tell your friends anything that's going on. Don't let people know what's going on in your life. Obviously, if there's something very traumatic, if you have something going on, you need to let someone know, right? And that can be a leader, like one of the youth leaders. That can be your parents, if so need, you should tell your parents. But if in any case, but Samson is that example of what to share and what not to share, and we see what ended up happening. She sold the secret. She was a spy. She sold the secret to what was people's name? Lord, I can't remember. But she was a spy, and he ended up getting his hair cut off. Right, and then he lost his power. It was Delilah. But yeah, what else? So I'm.
First Kings chapter 13. So we can read this one. First Kings 13. We'll just start reading from verse 6, just because of time. First Kings 13, 6. If I see. It says, then the king answered and said to the man of God, please entreat the favor of the Lord, your God, and pray for me that my hand be restored to me. And so the man of God entreated the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him, and it became as before. And then the king said to the man of God, come home with me and refresh yourself, and I will give you a reward. And this is verse 8 now, right? But the man of God said to the king, if you were to give me half of your house, I will not go in with you, nor will I eat bread, nor drink water in this place. For so it was commanded me by the Lord God, saying, you shall not eat bread, nor drink water, nor return by the same way you came, so that he went another way and did not return the same way that he came to Bethel. He had no business telling anybody what God told him. And when it will be destroyed, it was this information that someone came and lied to him and reversed. And so there was no reason at all to be talking to someone and say, this is the plan of God for me. I am supposed to not eat here. I am supposed to go out this way. That was a place of intimacy. And I think we can also learn from that. The same with Samson, right? Yeah. This is your source of power. God is not, like, you have no business telling anyone whatever there's some things that you will receive on the place of intimacy that is just for you, to guide you. or not to share with the world.
That is so good. I actually read about that story, and I felt so bad for this man because there's times where you'll think that you have some, or he didn't even know who he was, but he used the fact that he was also a prophet to familiarize himself with him, to like make him comfortable. And once he got comfortable, he was like, yeah, this is what the Lord, and you can see that sometimes even if you got comfortable, there are things that you don't need to let other people know. And even in the same sense, like, he wasn't pestered the same way that Samson was. Samson, and I'll read from Judges 16, where it says, Judges 16, verse 16, and it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him, so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart, and has said to her, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And so you can imagine, like, you may have friends. I know I do this to my friends sometimes. If they might be like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna tell you something, and they'll be like, never mind. I'll be like, nah, you gotta tell me. At this point, you can't. Like, why wouldn't you tell me? And so I'll literally be like begging, can you tell me? Can you let me? Like, no, don't. You can't just not tell me what you were gonna say. And so, even in this sense, like, I can't imagine being pestered to the point of death. Like, I've actually been, this person is asking me on a daily basis, tell me what your secret is. Tell me what your secret is. But even in that, even then, there's still like a strength that we should have in withholding what we're not supposed to tell, or what we're not supposed to let other people know. And that definitely comes from the Holy Spirit. That strength definitely comes from the Lord. Like, and then even then, he wasn't even supposed to be around Delilah, right? Like, that match was completely wrong. But I want to ask the next question. What is the difference between being vulnerable and oversharing? Because I feel like sometimes, and that's what I wanted to touch on, is like, don't let anybody, there's a difference between not letting people know and then completely being standoffish, or withholding because the Lord told you to, and completely just closing yourself in. And so for you guys, if anybody could define it for me, what is the difference that you like between being vulnerable and oversharing? Selena.
I think for me, when it comes to being vulnerable, because I'm generally an open person, so vulnerability has to do, for me, with being open, versus oversharing is more so the intricate details attached to it. I think of it a little bit like a testimony. Like, if I was giving a testimony about like lust, like, it's one thing to say, yeah, I struggle with lust, versus like going into the details. There's no need for all of that. So that's me.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. I think that's a really good way, like being transparent versus being like just too much, just talking too much. And that's true. Like, we can see examples of being vulnerable in the Word, like people who have let Jesus know, and some examples that I can give of, or actually, who could give me an example of vulnerability in the Word? Like, anybody? Okay, so one of my favorite examples of vulnerability in the Word is the woman with the issue of blood. And I genuinely feel like it's one of my favorite examples because obviously she didn't tell anybody, like she didn't let anyone know specifically what she was going through. She just touched the hem of his garment, right? But that it still takes a level of humility to have reached out to your very last hope. We're talking about somebody who has been to so many doctors, who has been through, this woman had to have been rich for her to have this issue of blood for as many years as she's had, and still have no issue. She would have had to gone from doctor to doctor. She would have had to been all over the place, like, in order to try and find out what's going on. And she reached the end of her rope. And once you're there, like, there's a certain level of humility. There's a certain level of, like, this is all that I have left. That I think is one of my, and that's why I'm not happy that she was bleeding for that long. Like, but I guess I just love how she recognized that she needed help, right? And even being humble can be vulnerable. Letting the Lord know what you're going through. So I touched a little bit on about undersharing with the Lord and how sometimes we find ourselves going to other people. Oh, Uncle Eko.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll be talking and I'll finish. All right, so what comes to my mind with that question as you speak will be the widow with the oil, the one that had 2 sons, and the debtors was coming to take her, and then she went to the prophet and said that my husband, a prophet, had died, and we have nothing, and we're in debt, and they're coming to take my son. I think that would have been a good example for when the prophet, while he was alive, to have been vulnerable with Isaiah, rather than dying, or with Elisha, rather than dying in debt. And then it was the wife that now went to the prophet, and now they were now provided for. I mean, I'm just saying that would have been a case where that man could have gone to Elisha and prayed while he was in debt, while he was alive, rather than, I mean, because the solution would have always been there, and it did not share with anyone. And the wife was the one that went and shared, that was just vulnerable with the man of God and said, you know what, this is the problem that I have, and you know that my husband was faithful while he was alive, but that faithful man died in debt because he did not go to the prophet. So I just see that we have to be vulnerable with the leaders or the people that are, in the place where they can pray with us and help us through our problem.
Absolutely. That's really good. Yes. So I wanted to touch on another example of, and I know we're talking about like oversharing a lot, right? And you know how to, I guess in a sense, bridle that. But I was talking about undersharing with the Lord. Undersharing with the Lord, and what the word says about sharing our emotions, our thoughts and feelings with the Lord. And I'm going to keep giving examples of who in the Word to look to for these things. And, you know, as we continue, I think another example of how to share with the Lord is David. David shared his heart. You see Psalms. How many Psalms are there? I mean, Psalms are like songs, but anyway. He shared his heart with the Lord continuously, like as if he had nobody else to turn to, as if there was like, this man was king. He had aides. He had people to guide him. I'm pretty sure he had elders. But in every instance that you see, he's pouring his heart out, his concerns, his worries to the Lord. Like, even if I make my bed in hell, like, you are there. As in, I have nowhere else to turn to. And so, continue. I want to ask you guys a question. Realistically, you guys, in the spirit of being vulnerable, right? How many of you guys, when you're going through something, your first reaction is to turn to the Lord? A show of hands. If your first reaction is to turn to the Lord. Okay. And that's realistic, right? Sometimes our first reaction is I will literally cry. I'm the biggest crybaby. I'll cry because I'm like, God, I can't do this. I can't handle it. So that's one of my first reactions. I'll go through my emotions. I'll go through my feelings. But then that realization hits, it sets in, that I actually have no other options here. Like, I have no one else to turn to but God. Like, if I don't turn to him, this problem won't get answered. There won't be a solution for this thing, right? And so I guess I want to challenge you guys to, as you're going through this week, if there's any issue, if something arises, God forbid, you know, we don't want you to go through anything, but tis his life. Like, we go through things. Let your first reaction to pray. And, oh my gosh, I'm going to give a story. So, I was on my way home, and I think I was on 495. I hit a pothole and my tire burst. I was so mad. It was a brand new tire. I just got it in May. And the tire popped. And I was like, I was so sad. Because at first I thought I could get a donut. But when I went to go and get it patched, I went to 3 different places. They all told me that I couldn't get this tire patched. Like, I would have to buy a new tire. And, I mean, used tires aren't that bad, but I didn't want to have to buy a new tire. I just bought a new tire, right? And so I was so mad. I was like, God, like, this sucks. Like, I have to buy a whole new tire on top of everything else that's already happening in my life. Now I need to get a new tire. And so I remember I was driving home, and I was just so frustrated. Like, I didn't know what to do. I actually cried at one of the tire places after they told me they couldn't fix it. I just started crying in front of the guy. And he looked at me. He was like, I don't know what you're going to do, but you got to get a new tire. He did not care. Anyways, but normally, like, it's just an instinctual thing to be emotional, to be sad, to just go through these things. And I remember when I was driving home, after I went to go to the place to get a brand new tire, and thankfully the lady who sold me the tire, she wanted to charge me $70 for it. I said, I'm not buying a tire. This is a used tire. I'm not buying it for $70. We argued back and forth. I was really frustrated. Anyways, she gave me a discount. I was able to get the tire for cheaper. And then the whole fee and everything. But on my way home, and tell me it's not God, there was a sign that said, is prayer your steering wheel or your spare tire? I said, immediately convicted. Because I said, Lord, is that specifically for me? If you want to see the picture of it, I'll show you. Because I took a picture. I was like, he's talking to me in this moment. Like, actually, because I didn't pray. I not once in my emotion, not once in my feelings. I called my friends. I called my mom. I was like, I'm on the side of the road. Like, I had to get a new tire. Literally just calling and just like venting. But not once in that moment did I think, like, let me put this to the Lord. Let me see what he can do about it. Because obviously I can't handle it. And yeah, let prayer be your steering wheel. Like, don't let it be a spare tire, because spare tires don't last long. They're actually not supposed to be on your car for more than 30 miles. They don't go anywhere, right? And you can keep putting it back on. You take it off, put it back on, but you're going to need a full-time steering wheel. Like, you're going to need something to actually move you, and the spare tire won't do that. And so let your first point of contact be the Lord. Like, in any situation, let him be the first person that you reach out to, that you're looking for, that you're seeking out when you're going through those problems. And so next Sunday, I want to see everybody's hands up when we ask, when you went through something this week, who did you go to, right? And let that be God. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is discernment for who should be in your life and at what level. All right, and I'm not sure if you guys remember. I know it was a while back, but we've talked about like, obviously friendships, who to be in your life and when and where. But how many of you guys have friendship tiers? Like, this person is your best friend. This person is associate. You have an acquaintance, work friend, gym friend. Like, they're not all on the same level, right? You would agree? Okay, yeah, right. And so how do you then, if anybody can answer this question for me, how then do you pick your friends, right? How do you pick the right person to share with? Because you're not just sharing information with them. You're not just sharing secrets. You're not just sharing, like, what your trauma, what's going on in your heart, what's going on in your life. You're actually doing life with these people. You're sharing your life, right? And so how do you pick your friends?
I feel like to pick your friends to, what's it called? To tell them, like, information that you don't want to tell them. I feel as that you gotta, like, study them and know how they will be. Cause some of them, they can like backstab you and tell you all your business without you knowing, right? So that's why it's good to, like, just study them, know how they is, so you can you have that knowledge of, like, okay, I can trust you. Since I know you since you grew up, right? So you might as well, like, tell them all your information and stuff. If you study them, if you can trust them, if you feel like you can trust them, then you can go for it. But if you don't trust them, then you can, like, make them as your associates and, like, okay, I can tell you, like a little bit of information, but it's not gonna be, like, personal detail. pretty much.
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else? Okay, Ebon. Y'all are holding me down. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Another, like just going off of that, another way to pick your friends is to make sure kind of make sure you're aiming for people who hold the same values as you. And not only that, but sometimes picking those who hold them stronger than you do.
Okay.
Because if you're friends with people who, like, if I'm, say I'm struggling with my faith, or I'm struggling with lukewarmness or something, and I go and befriend someone who's just as lukewarm as I am, if not worse, then and now I have a friend, but that friend is only gonna make me spiral even worse in my lukewarmness, because now we share, like, I guess we're on the same level now, but being on the same level keeps us from either of us growing. And so making sure you're friends with people who are either sharing proper values with you or sharing values that are even stronger than your own, so that they can help bring you up as well. Because you don't, like, it's not like, oh, you can't be friends with people who are younger or not as smart as you or not as successful. It's not about, like, their physical gain, but, like, who they are as a person, if that's adding to your life or subtracting from your life.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so, oh, Joy, did you want to go?
Okay, so I'm typically a shy person in general, so when I choose my friends, I tend to go for people who are most likely level-headed and have a clear mind and goal in what they want to do in life or in anything in general. So if I want to go for a friend, I'm most likely going to go for a person that would have like interest in many things, rather than somebody that has interest in one, which they may be good at, but like somebody that's interested in many things can be able to go into many aspects and give me some perspective as well in what I may want to do or in the future or what I want to do now. So
yeah, that's good. And, those are just a few ways of how you may individually pick your friends, right? And I want to go into scripture, right? We're going to talk about the word and what it says about how to pick your friends, or not even how to pick your friends, but what does it say about friendship, and what should that look like? How should you carry your friends? How should your friends be carrying you, right? Because we know that to some aspect it says that we should share each other's burdens. We should be able to carry one another, lift one another up. And so I know for myself that when I'm picking my friends, I kind of don't, and this might sound weird, I kind of don't pick my friends. Like, I feel like there's people who choose me, like, or, like, I don't do the law of attraction stuff, but there's people in your life that are quite literally graced to be your friend, right? They're quite literally they're capable of handling what's going on in your life, who you are, how you are as a person, growing with you on top of that, right? When I think about like people in my life as my friends, I haven't necessarily thought about picking people who are on the same level or where I'm at. Like, I have friends who are baby Christians. I have friends who are way up there in their faith. But what I have noticed is that we're all still growing, right? The only time that I've seen me lose a friend or someone has stopped being my friend is when they've decided to stop growing. When they decided that they're no longer going to do this walk, or they're no longer walking in the same path as me. Where it's not even that we're not friends anymore, but we're going different ways. We have different paths in life. We're, different directions. And so that's where I find that we may end up, not being friends anymore, not being as strong as we used to be. But one of the things I want to talk about is Peter and Jesus, and how to be, I guess, looking at their relationship, right? Peter was somebody who, Peter's one of my favorite people in the Bible. Like, I literally love this man because he's so sad, but like, he's so real. This man went through so much, like jealousy, like cowardice. He was fearful. But at the same time, he had so much zeal and love for the Lord. Like, this man loved Jesus. But at the same time, his emotions were so real. Like, he was just a man. And so I guess, like, if you look at it, one of the parts where we talk about Peter, it's Luke 4, verse 8. We'll start at, no, not Luke 4, apologize. Matthew 16, verse 30, not 30. Matthew 16, verse 21. And it says, from the time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and was raised the third day. Matthew 16, verse 22. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord, that this should not happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of